June 6, 1944, 07:30 hours, Omaha Beach, Normandy. The surf throws itself in ragged curtains across a shore already braided with blood and smoke. A private named Ingram Lambert crawls forward through the cold, grinding surf, dragging a 5-foot steel tube behind him. Machine gun fire tears the sand to pieces. Men fall and do not move. Lambert reaches the barbed wire apron that blocks the beach exit. He shoves the tube underneath the snarled metal, fits the detonator, and pulls the friction igniter. Nothing. The fuse fails. Before he can do anything, a burst of gunfire cuts him down. A lieutenant crawls out, finds the faulty igniter, repairs it, and brings the charge to life. The blast rips the wire apart. Men try the gap. The first through is shot dead. Then Brigadier General Norman Cota pushes his troops into the breach and goes through himself to lead by example. His courage steadies men who had stared at impossibility moments before. That ugly, plumbing-like steel tube, invented in colonial India 32 years earlier, has just opened a hole in Hitler's Atlantic Wall. It looks absurd. 5 feet of 2-inch pipe, carried in threaded sections, each section weighing about 13 pounds and packed with explosive. Push it under the obstacle, light the fuse, run. The explosion shreds wire, detonates mines, and clears a 3 to 4 meter lane through the mess. It is brutally simple. It is lethal to those who must assemble it under fire. This is the story of the Bangalore Torpedo, a device so elementary that it seems obvious in hindsight, and yet so profound that it helped make the Allied invasion possible. The wire and entanglement problem that created it is older than the device itself. During the early 20th century, sappers confronted barricades and leftover booby traps across colonial battlefields. Captain R.L. McClintock of the Madras Sappers and Miners devised a standoff method in 1912 while serving in Bangalore. He wanted a way to break obstacles from relative safety. Modular steel tubes that screwed together, one or more filled with explosive and the rest acting as spacers to reach the wire from cover. The nose cone was smooth, so the assembly could be shoved forward without snagging. The idea was elegant and practical. The British Army adopted the device formally in 1914. The Great War turned McClintock's peacetime fix into essential kit. Trenches and barbed wire belts across the Western Front were deep and layered. Sappers who crawled forward with wire cutters were slaughtered. Artillery could destroy entanglements, but it also cratered ground and announced the attack. The Bangalore enabled engineers to breach wire from relative concealment and then detonate the column, creating a clear passage for infantry. Between the wars, the design gradually evolved. Threaded sleeve joints gave way to quicker spring clip connectors, so freezing wet hands could snap sections together fast. Explosive fillers were standardized for mass production. Wartime configurations typically used Amatol or similar TNT blends, topped with boosters to ensure full detonation across the column. By World War II, the basic combat load was simple: 5-foot tubes that could be linked to any required length, packed in crates, and carried by assault troops or engineers. The torpedo was never perfect. Its blast was lateral. It shredded wire and knocked out cloth and wood obstacles rather than blowing massive concrete gates into rubble. Heavy steel Belgian gates and deeply buried anti-tank obstacles required shaped charges or armored engineering vehicles. Yet for wire, concertina coils, and apron fences, the meat of beach defenses and trench belts, Bangalore's were the ideal tool: portable, reliable, and brutally effective. Why were Bangalores still necessary on D-Day? Because German defensive doctrine on the Atlantic Wall intentionally designed kill zones. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, called in to inspect the coastlines in 1943, understood that Allied air superiority would make rapid counterattacks difficult, The decisive fight would occur as soldiers tried to leave the beaches. German engineers planted a geometry of obstacles, hedgehogs and tetrahedra to tear open landing craft, Belgian gates and reinforced stakes to stop vehicles, and crucially, dense systems of barbed and concertina wire guarding every exit. Machine gun nests were sited to sweep every meter of that wire with interlocking fire. Any man with wire cutters was exposed for minutes. Those minutes were usually fatal. Allied planners knew this. They tried mechanical answers, Hobart's Funnies, AVREs with petard mortars, Sherman crabs with flails, and crocodile flamethrower conversions. Those mechanized solutions were decisive on beaches where the specialized armor could reach, but the landing schedule, tides, and rough seas sometimes stranded tanks offshore. When amphibious devices sank or the tidal window closed, engineer teams on foot remained the only option. On Omaha that morning, the amphibious tanks were rendered useless en masse. Engineers with Bangalores were the only instruments left that could cut wire where it blocked exits. Training for these assaults was relentless and grim. Assault engineers rehearsed at Slapton Sands and in Fabius and duck exercises until the assembly and firing procedure were automatic. They practiced in cold water with shouted casualties and simulated artillery. They learned the connecting sleeves, the fusing, the retreat to a minimal safe distance, and the immediate rush through the gap. Reality, under concentrated machine gun fire and rising tide, was worse. Men had to screw tubes together with numb fingers, push the assembly under concertina coils, and set fuses while shells and bullets sent men sideways. The casualty figures tell the story. Gap assault teams were sacrificial by design. Historian John McManus and assault reports record horrific losses among naval combat demolition units and assault sappers on Omaha. Some units faced casualty rates near 50%. The NCDU teams and Army engineers who went in first often paid with their lives to open the breach. And yet their work mattered. In sectors like Dog White and Dog Green, Bangalore opened the first usable paths off Omaha, allowing waves to climb the bluffs and attack German positions from the flank. At Dog White, General Cota's act of leading through the gap turned a moment of paralysis into momentum. Across the invasion front, Allied approaches varied. The British and Canadians had leaned more heavily into mechanization after Diepp's lessons in 1942. Hobart's Funnies were designed to produce protected, mechanized breach capabilities and accordingly reduced man-portable explosive casualties on Gold, Juno, and Sword. The Americans, who still relied on man-portable breaching charges in Bangalores carried by engineers and rangers, accepted higher human risk for tactical flexibility. A soldier could take a Bangalore into a defile or draw where armored vehicles could not. The tool itself continued to evolve. The U.S. adopted the M1A1 Bangalore with spring clip joints and standardized charges. Millions of sections were manufactured to keep up with training and operational demands. Post-war, engineers refined materials, aluminum tubes, improved explosives, quick connects, and nations fielded advanced versions like the British L-26A1, using modern explosives and ergonomic threads so mud and sand wouldn't stop assembly. Yet the principle remained unchanged: steel tube, explosive filler, standoff breaching. And Bangalore's life didn't end in 1945. It resurfaced wherever infantry needed to clear wire quickly and cheaply: Korea, Vietnam, and the Middle East. Even in the 21st century, simple explosive-filled tube breaches have been reported in modern conflicts where low-tech, portable breaching still beats heavy engineering assets. That durability is an argument for simplicity: a device with no moving parts, easy to manufacture and to use under extreme stress. But the human cost is part of the story too. A Bangalore is only as safe as the distance you can give the firer. On a crowded, burning beach at low tide, that margin shrinks to nothing. The GAP teams at Normandy recognized that their task was lethal and did it anyway, because the alternative, frozen on the beach under sustained fire, meant annihilation for the entire assault. Courage and tools together made the difference. Cota did not merely order men into the breach, he went first. That gesture was the same logic that made Bangalore possible in the first place. Practical tools used by people who knew the price. So what is the legacy? Captain McClintock's 9-rupee prototype from Bangalore may have been cheap and crude, but it solved a foundational problem in assault warfare: how to clear entanglements without sending sappers to be picked off. Mechanized alternatives reduced such costs where they could be used, but no vehicle and no gun could replace a man-portable breaching tool in every situation. From the trenches of 1916 to the sands of Normandy, from Korean hills to modern battlefields, the Bangalore Torpedo proved that elegant simplicity, matched to doctrine and brutal training, can endure for generations. If you found this look at the tools that carried men off the beaches and into history useful, hit subscribe. We unpack the inventions and the people behind them every week. And if you want a deep dive into Hobart Funnies next, say the word and we'll walk the engineer's workshop that shaped D-Day.